Good afternoon. My name is Chase Richmond. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about the evolution of business ethics. And when I say that, I guess a lot of people probably are going to think, oh, we're going to talk about the Sarbanes-Oxley Act or GAP or something like that. Different policies and things that have been released or put in place to further the enforcement of ethics in business, but rather I want to kind of talk about what we know today is kind of not what it's always been with ethics. The culture has changed and technology has forced ethics to evolve over time. And I want to talk about that because I think a lot of times people look at the past and the policies and the things that businesses have followed in the past and think, well, how did they do that? How did they get away with that? Well, things have evolved, and why have they evolved? I want to discuss that a little bit, and that's kind of what I did my research on. So the first little part of that is the history of ethics in business, because to understand why it's changed and why it's evolved, you first have to understand where it came from or why it began in the first place. So the first person to actually define ethics was Aristotle. And essentially what he said was justice and fair treatment of all parties in a transaction is what ethics is. So what does that mean? Basically, if I buy something for $1, you give me something that's worth $1. I'm not going to pay $5 for something that's only worth a quarter. That's not fair. That's not right. And obviously that goes on a much bigger scale. And in Aristotle's time, it was a lot more material for material rather than cash, And so that's why it all started there, and that's why that was what it was defined as. So move up a while in history, and really the first ethical issues, I guess you could say, had to do with large companies such as Carnegie Steel or Standard Oil that forced a need for change in business. The problem was rich bosses and poor factory workers. You didn't have much of a middle class. There was monopolies going on that caused for people to get very wealthy and to hire bottom line employees. There was not a whole lot of in between, and that caused for lots of tension in the workplace and other issues. Ethics really began to change in the 1960s. There was a lot of civil rights issues as well as drug use was increasing, and there was a lot of tension in the workplace, and things needed to change. Over the next several years, obviously, as we know, culture changed. Just one example, just think, when was the last time you saw a doctor smoking in his office? Or when was the last time you saw real fur on a commercial ad? For anyone my age, probably never. If we saw a doctor smoking, they would be fired. But that used to be normal because studies hadn't come out showing that was wrong. There's a quote I want to read. It says, "Ethical standards do not remain fixed. They transform in response to evolving situations. Over time, people change, technology advances, and cultural mores shift." And things change. Technology changes. One thing that I always like to bring up is like in elementary school, people my age or older were taught cursive. We were taught that we would never have a calculator in our hand. We were taught to do all of our assignments on pencil and paper. Well, all of that's obsolete because things change. So that brings it up the technology age. So new programs every single year make it easier to get work done, but harder to stay on top. And so that kind of promotes cheating and lying and stealing and all of that, because it is harder to stay on top, and it's easier to do that because of the technology. Technology can be great, but it also can be horrible. And that another thing with technology and all the different acts and things that they've done to control this brings up the argument of privacy versus security. we can only watch so much without it being a violation of privacy, but we need that security. So, in conclusion, money controls kind of everything, whether you like it or not. And that's the reason ethics are needed, because it's getting easier and easier all the time to access information, and harder to control every aspect. So we need regulation in place. Really, when it comes down to it, most people are good. They want to do what's right. But because sometimes money gets tight or other things, it allows for slip-ups, and that's why ethics are needed. Ethics will continue to evolve and keep up with the changes, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Is just that ethics do evolve, and things aren't always going to be the same as they were yesterday, and they won't be the same tomorrow.